when we did the valuation of the services of the whale, people asked me, are you going to sell the carbon of the whales? I said, heck no, man. No. It's about making the whale visible so that they stop hurting her. The whale, as big as she is, she's invisible to the market because I did the calculation in my head. I was thinking, here's a captain coming in his ship and says, you want what? And we tell him or her, hey, we see you. You're going to hit this wonderful, beautiful humpback. And the captain says, okay, what do you want me to do? Slow down? Kill my engine? Change directions? I mean, look what happened here in Baltimore. The guy couldn't do anything. He hit the bridge and brought it down. So all of this is very costly for a ship. And if I am slow, and if I do all of this, I will miss delivering my cargo at the port, and there's a penalty to it. So in his mind or her mind is making a calculation. If I hit that whale, what's the penalty? 0.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Blue Pioneers podcast. I'm Kat Bruce, the skipper of the Sea Change crew, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Ralph Chami, who's one of the world's leading voices on valuation of nature, particularly in the ocean environment. Ralph actually had a long career working for the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, before making the transition into the world of nature. So Ralph, welcome to the podcast. And perhaps you can start off just by telling me a little bit about how you made the transition from a long career in the IMF to whale conservation and nature finance.
First of all, many thanks, Kat, for making me part of this narrative, wonderful narrative. So I spent 25 years at the IMF. I retired about a year ago. But in 2017, I was a very tired mission chief. I had worked on countries which I refer to as fragile. And they take their toll on you, physically, emotionally. And so I bumped into a mutual friend of ours, and she said, you don't look very good. I said, I don't feel very good. I want to do something completely different. And then she said, what would you like to do? And out of my mouth came something that said, I would love to see the great whales. I have no idea why. It wasn't on my mind, just came out. I was even surprised at myself. And the answer was even more surprising. She said, I'm part of this group that studies the blue whales. Would you like to come on the boat with us? I found myself in the Sea of Cortez in a 25-foot boat and with a bunch of strangers, wondering, what the hell am I doing here? I hadn't finished my thought, and out of nowhere comes this magnificent creature. She was about 110 feet long, and I'm in a 25-foot boat. Since I've been raised by the Jesuits, first thing came to my mind, oh my God, Jonah's story is true. Except my fate is not going to be the same. She's going to just swallow me and that's it. But there was no fear. No fear. I remember that. I was like, and then I was like, where have you been? Where have I been? And then she opened her eye. Man, it's like as if I'm looking at her today. That light in the eye. She was like, I see you. In a sense, I see you. And I think I had tears coming down my face, and I thought, where have I been all my life? That was the moment where everything changed. Her eye probably is bigger than me. So, and of course, at night, then the story is that at night we're all imbibing some alcohol. And then I overhear them talking about whale carbon. I had no idea what they were talking about at all. I could not understand what they were saying. I was like, because I was in sciences, first degree of mine was in sciences, physics and this. I was like, we're all carbon units. They said, yeah, but Ralph, great whale is a bit bigger. No, I said, yeah, but what are we talking about? And they told me, go read Andy Pershing's 2010 paper. So they're all asleep. I'm on my bed by myself. So I was like, I download on the iPad. the Andy Pershing's paper, and there it is in table 1. He's looking at carbon. Well, he's looking at other things, but carbon per species of great whales. And me being an economist, I want to know on average, because that's how we work, right? What's on average? So what's an average? And then I realized when you do some calculations, about 9 tons of carbon and multiply by 11 over 3, that's mean 33 tons of carbon dioxide is being kept out of the atmosphere. I remember when I had done an Excel spreadsheet at night. I didn't sleep that night. And then I hit the number. I saw the number. I fell off my bed physically. Got back on the bed. I'm like, what the hell? What? That's like 1,500 trees. You see, in my mind.
Work. I mean, what is the carbon that the whale is sequestering? What processes are involved in that?
Well, what it is these great whales feed on krill. And that krill, and there's actually a paper in Nature journal came out last year or a year and a half ago, talking about the voracious appetite of these whales. So they accumulate quite a bit in their tissue. Some of it they breathe out, of course, but turns out what they do, so they feed on krill, and krill feeds on phytoplankton directly or indirectly. And phyto needs phosphorus, nitrogen, and iron. And turns out that the poop of this whale carries many of these, especially the limiting factor, the iron. I didn't know any of this. I mean, this is the scientist telling me this, and I'm like, really? I kept saying to them, really? Because I'm a researcher, so you tell me something, I'm like, first question, very interesting, really? And I go read it. Where do I go read it? They're like, oh, go read, this paper by Lavery, by Roman, by this, by that. So I was reading, I was like, oh, then I came back a few days later. It's like, hey guys, so what's happening to the whales? They said the whales are dying. And we used to have 4 million or up to 5 million before whaling, and then we decimated them, 95% of them. Now they've come back to about a million, depending on the species. And no one cares. And I said, maybe you're not telling the story to the people that matter. And they said, like, what do you mean? I said, look, you're looking at conservation because you're protecting nature. But nature exists in a market system. And the market system does not understand a living nature. The market system understands a dead nature. What is the value of a tree? Oh, timber, dead. What's the value of a fish? Oh, the fish I had for dinner the night before. But what the scientists were telling me is that the whales were capturing carbon, among other things. Turns out, by the way, because of this circularity, when there's more whales, there's more krill. When there's more krill, there's more seals, there's more penguins, there's more fish. So the whales do a lot of other things than just sequester carbon. But for me, I was sitting at the IMF in 2017, and we were pricing carbon because of the climate change. We're trying to figure out what would be the price of carbon that would change people's behavior. And I thought, hey guys, how about if I value her services? And of course, the scientists had no idea what I was talking about. They're like, what? No, the phyto captures, emits, oxygen 50%. I said, no, oxygen, price of oxygen will always be zero because we were endowed with so much oxygen so no matter what. But I said, but carbon prices are going up because of the 2015 Paris Accord. Why would you want to do that? I said, what do you mean? Here's the whale. She's an ally in the fight against climate change. They're like, what would you do with it? I said, we would ask this simple question. I work for the IMF. I provide a service. They pay me a salary. The whale is providing a service. She's capturing carbon. If she could speak our language, because she does speak her language, but not our language, maybe she'll say 2 things. They said, what? 1 will be stop killing me. And 2, pay me. This service ain't free. Hey, Ralph, you get paid by the IMF. Why shouldn't I be paid for my services? My services are more important than your services. Markets do not understand the living nature because they see no value in the living nature. So a dead whale fetches 40,000 because they sell it for their blubber, oil, or meat. But they don't understand that the living whale is providing invaluable services. And if we were to say, hey, just by looking at her carbon sequestration and a few other things, here's a value, perhaps everybody would stop in their tracks and take notice.
How much is a living whale worth?
Well, the first number was 2 million, and I didn't tell anybody for about a year.
2 million is so much more than 40,000.
Exactly. That's it. And this is that's exactly, even for me, I was in shock. I had no idea what the number would be. And I kept, and I mean, if the number was 100,000, still 100 is more than 40,000. But when it's 2 million, by the way, that number is much higher now, because when I did it, the price of carbon in the compliant market was 20. The price now went up to 100, then to 80, then to 60, and the futures price for carbon. And by the way, I only looked at just the carbon side. If I had looked at the other types, the impact on the fish stocks, the impact on biodiversity, which is, as you know, you're a lead. You're a lead in this area. If I look at the biodiversity value, oh my goodness. But I didn't have that data, and I'm not an environmental economist. So a few things I had to do, which is who's my target audience? Not the scientists, not the converts, the sinners like me, right? The ones who are in the dark, who had no idea what a living nature, living for itself, is worth to us. Because if you remember 2017, 18, everybody was in climate change. Very few people were in the nature world. Sir David was there, Sylvia Earle was there, you were there, but the world was in the climate world. That was the one. And so when you tell nature, they're like, so what? So when you bring it and you say, dude, to fight climate change, you need nature, nature living for itself, not living tied to a tree or in a zoo or an aquarium, frolicking freely in the ocean. That whale, if she doesn't even know you exist.
I completely hear you. When I started Nature Metrics in 2015, and I went to ask investors for funding to scale up nature monitoring, I got a lot of very strange, quizzical looks and questions about who on earth would pay to know about nature. But I guess that's also my question to follow up on the valuation of the whale. I guess it's one thing to know that, but then what do you do with that knowledge? How do you integrate it into the market, and who buys and who sells, and how do you, how?
Okay, so, well, the work started with the whale, but then suddenly I got this call from this scientist with a heavy Italian accent, says, you're saving the whales. Why don't you help me save my elephants? Okay. What do your elephants do? He's like, oh, they do sequester carbon in the forest. And their delta is between 7 and 14% in carbon. It's like, really? Again, I'm a researcher, right? Is this your opinion? He said, no, I published it in Nature Journal. And I have a follow-up in Proceedings National Academy of Sciences and blah, blah, blah. So can you help value their services? I said, I don't know. I like the whales. I need a scientist to teach me the population growth model and the rate of sequestration. Once I know that, I can build the mathematics of it, you see? And so we, together with Fabio, we published a number of articles on how, the value of elephants. These are the forest elephants in the Congo Basin. But once we did that, then the UN came along and said, hey, you seem to know how to value living systems. Remember, I'm doing market valuation, not environmental economics valuation. There have already been numbers there, but these were shadow pricing, meaning to know what the value of something, you survey 1,000 people and you ask them how much are they willing to pay, and you come up. But you see, I come from the markets. If you talk to me about what people are willing to pay, I will say, I'm not interested, because the market, if you want to sell something in the market, we call it has to be transferable. So I sell you this shirt. You may be interested in it because somebody else may be interested in it. It's called transferable. And that price, you tell me, how much should you pay for it? I paid $30, whatever. Okay. Then I may buy it from you. But if I tell you I made up a price, then people say, who are you to make up that price? And is it transferable? Does anybody else want it? So I come from the markets, and I spent 30 years in the market. So I know that language very well and what it needs to create a market around nature. Now back to the valuation. So the science, the new science was telling us nature is very, very relevant to our lives. By the way, I'm not talking about the provisioning side. I'm talking about the regulating side of nature, right? The carbon sequestration, the water quality, all that wonderful stuff that had no value in the markets. And the reason it had no value because there's an assumption made in the market system that nature is inert. So I had to go back to Francis Bacon, and there it is in his he and Descartes and all of them. They believed that nature had infinite commodities. So if you have an infinite nature, what do you care whether you pollute it, extract, or destroy it? It's always there. So that side of nature, and that is the problem. That's why we are where we are here, because it colored our relationship with nature. Why should I worry about something that's always infinite, is inert, is always there? So I'll focus on myself, you see? But if you tell me, no, you got to worry about nature because she too is a living system, just like you. She needs attention, she needs care, she needs love, she needs this. Oh, so it exists. And because the price was zero, because it's infinite, then it's invisible. So as big as the whale is, the ship never sees the whale because the ship's captain says, so what if I hit a whale? There are many other whales. And what does it do for me? Nothing. See, it's invisible. Whereas the conservationists are crying and bleeding, and my goodness, a beautiful whale got skewered on the bow of a ship. Ship's captain is a nice guy or she's a nice person. It's not about that. It's like if they stop, change direction, it costs a lot of money. So what I was trying to do is change that calculation on the market side, saying, no, if you hit that whale, there's a cost. It's just 2 million. And now let's redo the calculation. So, but before I got there, the UN came along, says you seem to know how to price, services of nature from the regulating side. Would you be interested in valuing seagrass? Again, same reaction. I know nothing about seagrass. Who can teach me about seagrass? And they said, oh, there's that famous guy, father of seagrass, Carlos Duarte. So you go read 30 some papers of Carlos Duarte. He's like a publishing machine. Guy's got like 1,100 papers to his name and counting. And there it is. He says seagrass grows exponentially for 50 years and at a constant rate forever. And I had been in pricing of companies and technology. I had never seen a technology like that. Which technology that grows for 50 years and continues to grow at a constant rate forever? The only limiting part is the land, is the space where it will grow. So it's colonial. I could not imagine that. So I called him up and I said, have you ever tried evaluation of it? He said, oh, I did some work and I got some number. I said, no, that number is completely wrong. Why? I said, because you have an annuity. You have a payment in perpetuity, growing exponentially. You have to use an exponential function, man. He said, so what are we talking about? I said, you're talking about $1 trillion. He could not believe what I was saying. He told me, your math is wrong. I said, no, my math is right on. These are nonlinear projection models, stochastic. We built in MATLAB based on your science. He said, can I see it? So she suddenly started to realize that, and by the way, seagrass, not only, as you know very well, it's not only carbon sequestration, but you have healthy seagrass, you have healthy fish stocks. So that's your delta in the fish stock. When you have healthy seagrass, you stave off flooding, and that's the delta from shore protection. You can calculate the value of each activity. And when you have healthy seagrass, you also have knock-on effect on the coral reefs. It purifies the water. You can calculate all these impacts, and suddenly seagrass is worth trillions of dollars globally. And from there, people start coming to me saying, can you value mangroves? And you've done seagrass. I said, no, but mangrove science is completely different than seagrass. Seagrass grows this way and that way. Mangroves only, like trees, they grow this way. It will never grow that way. You'll have to plant it. So you can't just extrapolate, and it's not linear and it's stochastic. And so we started doing this work. So science tells you living nature, living for itself, is incredibly valuable to us. That's the science. We come along and we translate that knowledge and science to dollars and cents. So the part of the society that has never paid attention to nature can take heed. Oh, wow. But beyond the wow, what else can you do? This is your question to me. So then the idea came, can we make a market in nature, in the protection and restoration of nature? And the literature then and now continues to talk about the risk side, which means we are losing the fight against climate change, we are losing nature. Okay, fine. But but for every risk, there's an opportunity. And here is the golden opportunity, which is yes, we can build markets around a living and thriving nature. So nature thrives, and all of us will thrive, and we can live happily ever after. How wonderful is that?
And what do those mechanisms look like? Sort of what are the ways in which that turns into sort of real payments and finance going into nature for conservation?
So let me start from the end, where we are right now, so that, and then I can go back in the interest of time. Yeah, on March 27, the EU passed the Nature Restoration Law. There's the UK Biodiversity Law. So laws like these create markets. So now there's a demand for how do I enhance nature? At the same time, there's also the agreement, the Paris Agreement of 2015, saying we need to fight climate change. And fighting climate change is not only about a reduction in emissions, but it's also about sucking back down into Earth, capturing that carbon that we put up there and sequestering it for at least 100 years. And to my mind, there's only one technology that does that, and our mutual friend calls it Earth Tech or nature. So nature is this 4 billion year old technology that knows how to grab carbon from the atmosphere and sequester it forever. I mean, you know all of this, Kat. I don't have to tell you this. As long as you don't disturb it. The oceans grab, it's really is where the lungs of the planet are, in the oceans. So, but the current stock of nature is not enough because we have destroyed so much of it. So we need to add to the stock. So that delta is what's really creating that market. So it's a market for not only protecting the stock, but adding to it, which is what we call the additionality. So demand being started with governments, then companies realized they have to do something. And now it was a voluntary market. In fact, that's what it's called, a voluntary market. But what's happening, the regulation now is caught up and says, no, it's not up to you. You're going to have to show me now. And if you look at the core principles, the Basel core principles for banking, they've revised them as of 3 weeks ago. And now banks have to account for what is the impact of nature on their business. That's one way. But the other way, how their business is affecting nature. That's called the double materiality. So all I'm trying to tell you is there's a new market around the living and thriving nature beyond the provisioning side that is in front of us now. And my work is about how do I create that market? How do I go from A all the way to Z? I mean, how do you do? And I have all the pieces of that puzzle, right? Including, I mean, that's where you come in. What is it that you have? How much of it that you have? What is your delta? That's where you start. Pillar one, science, always been the science. In fact, in doing this, we created a new field in finance called science-based finance. I'm getting a lot of calls from business schools. Can you come and show us how to do this? And how wonderful it is to be a young woman or man in these days and realize I can make money by rebuilding our nature, rebuilding our home, bringing the good news. Exactly. And it's not 0-1 proposition. It's a win-win proposition. I rebuild nature. When you create resilience in nature, you help stabilize people on their land. Better environment, better health. Those that own nature get the money to look after nature in perpetuity, look after themselves. And those that demand it will get what they want, which is maybe if you want carbon credits, biodiversity credits, cultural credits. Really, I like to think of it as natural capital credits. And then that fairy tale that they told us this is a fairy tale with a happy ending, it's true.
So, and I want to I'll come back actually to that thing about the outlook for the future. But I just the last thing I sort of wanted to touch on was to find out a little bit about what you're working on at the moment in the Pacific, because I think that sort of ties together a number of the things that have led to this point, including obviously the finance and nature, but also the use of innovative legal systems and new
Yes,
laws. Can you tell me a bit
sure.
about that?
Really, the story starts with when we did the valuation of the services of the whale. People asked me, "Are you going to sell the carbon of the whales?" I said, "Heck no, man. No. It's about making the whale visible so that they stop hurting her. The whale, as big as she is, she's invisible to the market because I did the calculation in my head. I was thinking, here's a captain coming in his ship and says, "You want what?" And we tell him or her, "Hey, we see you. We see you. You're going to hit this wonderful, beautiful humpback." And the captain says, "Okay, what do you want me to do? Slow down, kill my engine, change directions?" I mean, look what happened here in Baltimore. The guy couldn't do anything. He hit the bridge and brought it down. So all of this is very costly for a ship. And if I'm slow, and if I do all of this, I will miss delivering my cargo at the port, and there's a penalty to it. So in his mind or her mind is making a calculation. If I hit that whale, what's the penalty? Zero. That's why the whale is in, because the penalty of hitting the whale, skewering her on the bow, I put it in LinkedIn last week. This leisure boat hit the beautiful whale, and she sailed into the harbor in New York. Nothing. They scraped off the poor whale off the bow. Nothing. So what I want to do is change that calculation. And the only way to do that is create a market for a living whale. So when we did the valuation, people said, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "Watch." So you start off by asking yourself, how come each one of us would like to get insurance, life insurance, health insurance. That's the demand side. Ask yourself, why are insurance companies interested in providing you with it? Why can you get a mortgage? Not everyone can get a mortgage because the mortgage company looks at you as a going concern. Oh, Kat, her expected income in the future is not zero; it's positive. So you're valuable to the markets. You can get insurance for your car because the car is viewed as an asset. Your home, you get insurance because your home is an asset, meaning it has value, it has future value. That's how we value assets. We look at the future stream of income, we discount it to the present. That's the value of your house, of your car, of your own services. So I was trained in all of that. And I was thinking, how do I apply that for the whale? The mathematics was the same, but there was something missing, which is the whale an asset or is the whale a person? And so the valuation was not enough. Either the whale is an asset like a car, so we can insure her, or the whale is a person like you and me. And I'm now working, I have the honor of working with the Maori people and the people of Polynesian people in the South Pacific. The whale to them is their ancestor. So there's no way I'm going to say, is the whale an asset of yours? She's their ancestor. So in the conversation said, would you consider declaring personhood, legal personhood on the whale? Now, the nice thing is that in New Zealand, they had already conferred personhood on a river, the Wanagui River. It's famous. It has legal personhood. In Panama, they conferred personhood on leatherback turtles. In Costa Rica, they had conferred personhood on bees. In Ecuador, nature has rights. And we worked with a brilliant group, Anna von Rebe and Michelle Bender of Ocean Vision Legal, and they taught us that there's 40 cases like that in the world where nature has personhood. Now, it doesn't make them humans. It just endows them with certain rights. So Exactly. And the right to pursue their lives unhindered, pursuit of happiness, just like you and me. So the idea was once they have personhood, then they become visible. Why? Because now you hit that whale. The Maori are going to come after you. If you hit the whale in their water, they're going to come after you for $2 million. If I'm crossing a street and a car hits me, you know, how do they calculate what is the penalty, the financial penalty? They say Ralph can no longer work. If he were to continue working, his stream of income over the rest of his working days would have been this much today. That's what that person is liable for, the person who hit me. So I was in my mind thinking, can I create that same approach? And it turns out, yeah, you can. You can. In fact, there are two cases in the legal, as I learned from Michel Bender, the authority on this, there are at least two cases of it. In Ecuador, there's a ship that was fishing tuna in the Galapagos, and the sailors went to jail and they were fined $10 million. In Belize, there's already precedent. Another entity hit a reef and destroyed it, and they were sued, and the governor of Belize collected $8 million. So there are already precedents to these things. So I started to think, okay, so if we have legal personhood for the whale, and you have a value for her services over her lifetime, now let's do the mathematics, you and I. I'm a captain of a ship, and you tell me the Maori, who are going to be monitoring their oceans, hey, watch out. We see you. You're in the way of a humpback. I certainly don't want to hit that humpback because I'm in for 2 million. So the insurance company that insures that ship is going to say, wait. When I insured you, there was no person swimming in the water. So here's what you're going to do.
How does that work in the ocean where I guess, whales don't stay within one national jurisdiction? Like, do you end up having to work with a lot of different national governments?
Beautiful. So imagine the following. I was asked that question. I actually had to solve that question because when you confer personhood on the river, it starts and ends mostly within New Zealand. So that's not an issue. But here's a whale that visits my country and then goes down, visits your country. And you're like, hey, Ralph, are you going to collect the 2 million? What about me? Yeah, and exactly that's the question I want you to ask because I'm thinking, yeah, you want to collect part of that 2 million? You have to first declare the whale a person and you have to invest in monitoring the whale. You see, so what happens is because there's that financial incentive of hitting or not hitting, you bring people to the table of recognition of, in order for me to even benefit or to be part of this or to even claim that the whale is mine, I have to prove that that whale comes down to my waters. So I need the monitoring, and monitoring is not costless. It's costly. So I would only invest in it if I'm serious about it. And then I need to declare: is the whale an asset of mine, or is the whale a person of mine? It doesn't matter from the perspective of getting the markets to realize the value of a living and thriving whale frolicking freely in the ocean. Now, watch what happens. The idea is not to penalize anybody. The idea is that the insurance companies that insures the ships start to say, wait a minute, I don't want to pay 2 million. So you're going to put an anti-collision device on your ship. That's why you and I have anti-theft devices in our cars, not to protect us, to protect the insurance company that doesn't want to pay for another car if your car is stolen. I was applying the same idea, you see, same idea. And then what happens is, so suppose we're two companies. You put that anti-collision device on your ship. I decide, no, you know what? I'm just going to play the odds. You're a better risk than I am because you're insured. I am not insured. So the capital markets now reward you. Your shares will sell at a premium. Your cost of debt will be lower. Relative to you, I am higher risk because if I hit that whale, I'm going to be paying 2 million out of my own pocket. So suddenly the markets now reward you for looking after the whale. How wonderful is that? So it's not about punishment, it's about bringing the markets to understand the value of the living system. And of course, who benefits from all of this? Everybody, including the whales, who look at each other saying, hey, man, we've never been loved like this before.
The tourism industries and actually a lot of the sort of local marine economies that rely
Exactly. So everybody, so the whales are protected, the ecosystem is protected, the oceans are protected. You stabilize, you create resilience in the ocean, as you know very well, you create resilience in the people. And the companies that are now not only ethical at a cost, but they're a source of revenue. Because by doing the right thing, they're rewarded by their consumers who have loyalty to them, by their investors who get to claim that my company is ethical, you see? And the company gets to tick the boxes, right? In nature restoration or the biodiversity law in the UK or the EU restoration law in the EU, you see? They'll get to say, hey, look, I'm doing the ethical thing, the moral thing, and you get rewarded. And then the markets, the rating agencies look at you and say, oh, wow, so they're not in to being sued for anything because they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's the vision. Not to sell carbon. The whales was never about selling carbon. The carbon and biodiversity was for the seagrass, salt marsh, mangroves, trees and this. And there, you never sell the underlying, ever. In fact, I work with the Maori also, two parts. One is protection, whale protection. The other one is they're victims of climate change. And they had no part in contributing to climate change because they live in harmony with nature, like all indigenous people, right? There's this beautiful balance between them and nature. We're out of balance. We're the ones who need to come home. We're the ones who need to come home. They're already home. So there is how do we generate money by restoring their nature that has been destroyed, not by them, by others, and bring that money back to restore nature, look after nature. And since they and them nature are one, by the way, we learned that firsthand when you hang out with them and you start to say blue economy, green, they're like, well, what is blue and green? I remember them saying, nature is one, Ralph, one breath, one continuum. When our whales die, they beach themselves. We take their bones and we put it next to a tree. That tree has the DNA of the whale. There's a continuum between them and the ocean, them and land where they live. So the idea was there for them to understand the optionality of restoring their nature so that they can sell never the underlying, never the asset. They retain ownership. And they would be negotiating with whoever wants to. Let's say I'm Microsoft or Google. I want to say that I'm investing in nature, I'm investing in biodiversity, in people, this. They would sell them those credits, if you like. And the money comes back to look after nature and people in perpetuity.
I love this, the concept of, I think it was my friend Neil Spackman from Regenerative Resources who sort of put it as sort of turning around the degradation and poverty cycles into a regeneration and wealth cycle. And that with, this very targeted, well thought through investment and legal systems, you can turn that around pretty fast, which I just think is one of the things that keeps me going, especially in this space. So Ralph, thank you so much for painting all of this in such vivid detail, really making this real, because I think that often the sort of, the economics and the science and everything can get really abstract, but I feel like what you do so beautifully is turn these into sort of really tangible stories and examples that I think everybody can follow the logic of, which is such an amazing skill. I'm conscious of time. I've got three questions that we end with on the podcast. One of them, the first one you've answered several times over in many brilliant ways already, but just for completeness, what is the sea change that you are working towards?
As an economist, I've been on the dark side. In a sense, I'm atoning for what I've done, and there's the good book says I'm not a religious person, I'm just a spiritual person. When you see the light, you don't dwell in darkness. So the sea change is to recognize that we don't have to live the way we are living because we know it's not sustainable. We know that. and that you're not really sacrificing anything by living the new paradigm, which is where nature and people are at the core. Think of it, Kat, as like this. You and I are eating a pizza, and if I have more pieces, I would give you my pieces, but let's just for the sake of it, if I eat more pieces, you have less. And then Basil knocks on the door, brings in another pizza. Suddenly, you and I can have more. I may eat more than you, but you'll have more than what you already have. That's what the science have revealed to us, is that the living nature, living for itself, is incredibly valuable to us. All we've done is we've translated that knowledge into dollars and cents. So the sea change is to embrace the new paradigm that is nature positive and people positive, because without the people, there is no nature. And certainly without nature, there's no people. That symbiotic relationship doesn't need a genius to tell you that. You know it, you feel it, and many of the local communities, indigenous peoples, continue to practice it.
What's something that everybody who's watching this podcast can do to help shift the world towards the new paradigm?
I think we should stop talking about it and we should do it. My mom was a professor. She would always say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. A lot of people say, but I said, listen, there's 1,000 excuses not to do this and one good excuse to do it. Do it. We perfect it later. We perfect it as we go along. So if there's something for the corporations, I would say it's time to invest in nature. That's my message to the private sector. You will do much better by investing in nature. No one can afford the loss of nature. To the consumers, I would say, hold your companies responsible. This idea that I sit in my cubbyhole and I say it's not my problem. No, we are all connected. All together. We are connected in this beautiful web of life. You cannot say, I am not involved. So the consumers have a role to play, which is to ask themselves, what I'm buying, is this from a sustainable? Is it, and yes, no. If it's no, don't buy it. There are other substitutes. The investors, you should be asking the companies in which you invest, are you investing in nature? And to the companies, I will make a value proposition. The investors, you're going to make money. You're going to make money by looking after nature. So it's not a cost proposition. It's a revenue proposition. How wonderful is that? It is the win-win paradigm.
What do you see in the work that you're doing that gives you hope that we can do this?
People like you. I mean, it's what I see in it is when a lot of this work is about people don't know. Like me, I was illiterate in 2017. But once you see the light, people don't want to dwell in darkness. They want to do the right thing because it's in you to do the right thing. Right? But they don't know how, they don't know. So I find that it's just my job is to bring that information. I don't ask for money. I'm not interested. I've never asked. You know me. It's just say, if you believe me, go practice it. What you want is people to go out and do this. What you want people is to hold accountable those that they're dealing with. Are you doing the right thing? And I'll end with this. This is remember Alice in Wonderland? And Alice, when she got lost, she bumped into the cat and she said, show me the way. And the cat says, where do you want to go? And Alice said, what if I don't know? And the beautiful answer came, well, then what difference does it make? We need to have a vision of tomorrow. The vision of tomorrow, it's going to be much more beautiful than today. And let's get on with it.
Perfect. That's a wonderful, wonderful way to finish. Thank you so much, Ralph. I could listen to you for hours, but we'll need to leave it there. But just thank you for your time and for sharing your stories and your knowledge and everything that you've learned over the last few years. Hoping to take some more people along on that journey with you as we go.
Thank you, Kat. I wish you the best, and thank you for giving nature a space on your platform.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.